We don't have 5 council members
Physically present.
physically here. It's not enough for a quorum, so it's not going to be a council meeting. So, but what we will do is, since we have all the department heads here, and we have some council members, I will go around the room and give the council members an opportunity to ask the department heads questions about the budget and the waiving of the tax cap, etc.
Okay.
Sound good? Councilwoman Testa? Okay.
So what?
Yeah, Mayor? Yes.
I'm just giving them a second, because Joe's trying to pay attention to us here.
Guys, we want to try to start the meeting.
All right, let's just.
Yeah,
I'll just go.
Mayor.
All right, so we've assembled all the department heads for the purpose of this meeting. Since, as the council president said, the council does not have physical quorum. This will not obviously be a meeting, but we're all here. So for the people in the room, one of the things I had voiced is that prior to making the decision to potentially not waive the tax cap before the deadline would expire, there were no questions asked of the department heads, or me for that matter, as to how we could run the city effectively with roughly $2.6 million less. So each of the department heads has come prepared to answer any questions from anyone who is in attendance, and we'll just kind of treat this like one of the old school ad hoc committee meetings is what we'll do. Anyone who's in attendance, obviously the department heads are at your disposal, and the questions that could have been asked can be asked. Everyone's here at the table, so I would appreciate if I can just kind of hand it back to the council president. This is your room, and we will go around, but any questions can be posed, and then each of the department heads have also come up with kind of a rationale of how they could do without the funds if they are not increased, so that the council members in the community will understand before the council goes into the sessions where you're going to start working on amendments, how we may deal with that. So that's.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
We'll start with Councilman Beatrice.
Yeah. I just got a couple things. First thing, I'd like to talk to the mayor. Are you part of the people we can ask questions to?
Of course.
Okay. So I just want to clarify, and I know the answer, but I want you to give me the answer. So this tax cap, tell me the ramifications, how serious it is that we don't go over it. And obviously, we don't have any choice now because tonight's, am I correct? Today's the last day and we can't?
Sir, regarding the deadline,
Right.
I'll defer to Corporation Council. Now, Corporation Council has set buffers for media, right? Because when you put things into the media, sometimes they don't run when they're supposed to. So they account for that. So I do think, like Councilman Williamson just mentioned, Wednesday. Now, let me speak to the ramifications. That was explained in detail by Corporation Council at the council meeting prior, but
It's very confusing is what I'm, in my point.
It's pretty cut and dry. Anything that would be levied, so if we get together and work together on amendments, and like last year, we bring together the tax raise down, and as a group, agree on what we're gonna do, anything above the capped levy would go into a restricted account, and it would not be accessible for budgetary reasons in fiscal year 26. So anything over that 2%, I think it's 2.1, but we'll just call it 2%, would be restricted. That's just how it works. That's how the tax cap legislation works.
Okay, after that year, is it cut and dry that money's in the account the state gives us to us, just like that?
Well, it's not the state. We would be told to put that in a restricted reserve.
Okay, and it's-
that's how that would function.
And we would get that
I've never
money.
actually as council president, I never had to actuate that function, but yes, that's how it works. And corporation counsel can explain it further as well, so.
Okay, the infrastructure line, we have, you have 200,000 in the infrastructure line, correct?
Hold on.
For repairs.
Could we just get a
I'm not- I'm
page
just on
number?
some- What's that?
Page number?
No, I'm not, I'm just looking at some, I don't have it right in front of me.
All right, well,
I'm looking at some, it's 200,000 is in the
yeah,
infrastructure.
for repairs.
Okay. Tell me about that infrastructure line, what those repairs are.
Those are for lights mostly at the moment.
Okay,
Like up in North Utica, we have to replace the pillbox, we have to cut back into the conduit to
Right,
find new
that-
wire to splice.
where we have no power, we have
Yep,
no
we
lights
have
at
no
all now,
lights,
we
yep.
haven't had.
Up by
Okay.
Con Med, all the lights on 12 right there by Con Med, they go
So-
out, and over by the business park.
If we were ever to trim anything off there, what do you feel is a fair amount? Nothing? Or do you feel
mean,
that it's,
It's hard to know how much to trim if you don't even know what the bill exactly is coming in at.
okay, all right,
But
okay, that's,
You know.
that's fair enough. How about, our police uniform division? I see that was, 677,000. Could somebody talk to me about that? Is that you, Eddie? That would be you, right?
That would be me.
So, on there, where, same thing there, what are we looking at on that? I mean, if you cut $100,000 out of that, what would you think would happen out of there?
So, I mean, those numbers are determined by Diana Court, Comptroller's Office,
Okay,
based on payroll. She projects in raises, staffing. I mean, the number can fluctuate slightly as a result of staffing. If we have vacancies that aren't filled, the number will change. You have to remember, too, that personnel move between divisions. So the number of personnel can go from patrol division to CID, and that number has to follow around between divisions. So those numbers aren't set in stone, they're an approximation. I think we all feel that
So-
Diana does a great job at that, and that's how that number's determined. If we cut it, it'll be supplemented with overtime if need be. If not, we'll get by.
okay, so, do you know right off the bat where your number is this year so far?
I do not.
You do not, okay. I'm just looking at some of these, different amendments that I've seen brought forward today. Councilman Bitar sent it, I thought he did a nice job here, and I just want to have some questions on a couple of them. Fire line, okay, our overtime here on the fire line, we're looking at 750,000. Where do you feel that is? Where do you feel that you can live with? Do you need that 750, all of that? Can any of that be moved, or is that?
I have a question.
Yes.
What amendments are you talking about?
They're not, well, I received an email this afternoon,
Oh, okay, no, you said amendments, so I just was curious.
potential amendments.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay,
All right,
I'm
great.
just-
No, I
okay.
I just wanted to
Yeah, I
understand
just
if there was
received,
something
and
we should look
I
at.
thought he did a nice job, and I think it's fair to ask the question.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So, where am I here now? I lost my train of thought here. Fire, okay, the, fire line. Replacement and overtime. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so right now, I got the most recent Munis report. We're at 98% of our replacement overtime line used. So we wanted to adjust it so we didn't run out like we're looking at this year. Could you move some of that? Possibly, but
Chief,
it's,
what's the date of the latest that you're at 98%?
Yeah, that's kind
What
of
are we
what
up
I-
to?
this is as of March 3rd. So we still got to make it through the entire month. So we're going to be, our replacement overtime line is going to be completely used up.
Okay.
I'll be short on that.
So you wouldn't say it's wise to cut anything out of that line? Obviously, you don't want to see nothing cut, but,
No, out of that particular line, no. We have we're looking at 4 retirements this month.
okay.
two just put in their intent to retire by the end of the month, so we are going to be running short as well.
Okay. Parks maintenance. Where are we there on that? I'm looking at seasonal. I'm looking at, it's 130.
Yes.
Where are you with that?
I think there's like 60-some thousand left in that. 130 brings us about 6 individuals for the summer session. We rely on them to do a lot of our heavy lifting work. Remember that Parks also handles all of urban renewal properties, and we handle the codes abatement, all the abatements,
Okay.
which really taxes the regular Parks Department.
Okay. So would you be comfortable if you were cut, or you?
I would not be comfortable.
Not comfortable at all, right? Okay. And my last question, and I don't have figures on it, but I'm gonna talk on,
So
The-
I want to say something about that particular one,
okay,
because I had to be very integral in basically standing up a way for the city to deal with all the homeless encampments, the unhoused, and the abatements. Without that overtime line, those things would not have happened, period. Okay?
yeah, I'm asking a question.
Yeah, no, but I just want to be point blank about
Okay.
it. Like, if I don't have the people, we can't do those things for the city and
Right.
keep those things clean.
So I'm gonna get into the paving part of what's going on, because there's a lot of talk, and so just tell me if I'm wrong, because I could be. So we have a referendum where we have to pay $5 million in paving, correct?
Correct.
We have also, when they said we were over all this money, we received we received the New York State money from
Yep.
Button
Chips.
John's office and all. We have to pay 5, but I believe you got 6.8 million last year, correct?
Yeah,
So we
minimum
didn't
is
go
5.
over, really. You had extra
We never went
money.
over. I had 3.6 million in CHIPS funding, which is Pave New York, pothole, fix our potholes. And we bonded for 2.5. So I had a working total of 6.1 million in paving
Okay,
of actual budgeted allocated money.
okay. And what do you have for this coming year? Do you have a set number yet on that?
Well,
We're still
since
wait-
everything is unknown, I'm going in, I don't even know what the CHIPS funding is gonna be, by the way. Right, the state hasn't put their numbers out, but right now it looks like I'm gonna go in with 3 million in mill and fill, which is general paving, and I'd like to do 1 million in repairs, which is 4 million. And that's only because we're talking about the bonding being less than 2.5. But if we did 2.5 in bonding, then I'd be at 5.5 million. It's 3.6 in CHIPS money, but my 100% of my paving payroll is charged back to the CHIPS money.
Okay.
So that's 500,000, 423,000. So we'll call it 500,000 for easy money. And that puts me at 3.1 for actual paving, and the rest is salaries.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. President, the only comment that I'm going to make is that I appreciate all the department heads being here. They were here for the last couple of budget meetings that we've had. The issue that we're running into now is that those that voted to not override the tax cap, besides Councilman Bitar, are not here without any amendments being proposed. So we have we can talk about all this, but they still have to cut $2.4 million out of the budget if they plan to get under that 2% tax cap. Right now, we have no idea, and the budget's due a week from Wednesday. So, I mean, we can talk all night, but there's got to be 5 people in the room willing to work, and it doesn't look like that's happening. So,
Mayor?
that's all I have to say.
All
Thank
right.
you.
One, thank you. You are absolutely correct. One, no votes can take place. This is not a sanctioned council meeting at this point, but we've convened everyone here. So for the people who are here, the department heads are sitting in this room. For the public who are here, the department heads are sitting in this room. And the department heads went to the department head meetings of the Common Council. I made sure that they were at those meetings to discuss things. They were not asked questions that had to do with, can you cut $700,000 out of your budget? Can you cut $500,000 out of your budget? Can you take $340,000 out of your budget? Had they been asked those questions, because the plan was to not override the tax cap, they would have answered those things.
I know.
Well, right, no, but my point is, so,
Mayor, when they came,
well,
well, I'm just
here's
telling
my
you, we
point.
just got the budget that,
So,
when they came.
if-
So,
If people want, in the interest of time, first off, Councilman Bitar did come here. So if he has any questions for these department heads that he would like to ask in this room, by all means, he's here. But then, at the end of that, each of the department heads can speak to what they would have spoken to had they been asked the question.
but let me interrupt you
prior.
for 1 second.
Yeah.
So in the past, this is the 6th time that I went through a budget. In the past, we went through, talked to them, seen what they said, and then we would have meetings and talk about, like I wanted to do a month ago, and go through line by
Well, that's-
line. So we didn't, to say we didn't ask the questions, we got the budget, that book, probably the day they were coming.
He's
So-
saying that, he's
No.
not saying
I'm
you.
not saying you guys.
He's
I know
saying the
what you're
council,
saying. I'm
certain
just saying.
council members as a whole.
And-
Right.
Didn't
When
ask
we
the
say we didn't
necessary
ask any
questions.
questions, you really didn't have time to go through it and look.
I presented the budget respectfully on February 6th.
You did.
Much longer of a time frame before when you had those meetings. So for the purpose of this meeting, the department heads are all here at your disposal. So if Councilman Bitar, if you have any questions for these.
Yeah,
department
I do.
heads.
Thanks, Mayor. First, Councilmember Beechers was asking about some of the potential amendments that I had submitted. I just want to be clear. Deputy Chief Noonan and I spoke today prior to me submitting the amendments. Chief Ingersoll and myself spoke today prior to submitting the proposed amendments. Commissioner of Parks Department, Dave Short, and I spoke before submitting the proposed amendments. So that's the first thing. Second, looking at this, I do want to go through a couple of the proposed amendments, or at least one. For the parks maintenance line, there was a budget amendment officially formally submitted regarding the overtime line, a reduction of $15,000. Can you discuss the importance of that to the Parks Department?
Overtime is very important to the Parks Department. We basically rely on the overtime to fill in during the spring for grass mowing throughout the whole city. It's also there for the band shell. Numerous activities that we perform relies a lot on overtime.
Okay. There was a proposed amendment, 2 of the council members here, 3 of the council members here, I thought they did a nice job. So that's something that you'd say you wouldn't be able to do without?
That's correct.
Okay. So a few generalized questions here, just so I can understand portions of the budget a bit more. What is the official dollar figure in terms of 1% increase in property tax equals fill in the blank?
He's doing the math.
It's about 374,000.
Okay, 374. Are we 100% sure on that number? Because I think since the annual estimate was provided to the council, we've received several different figures, and I think if we're looking at this, we want to make absolute certain
So,
the dollar figure.
Can I comment on that? Because the budget director and I had to go through this multiple times because we had multiple different proposals internally to try and bring this tax rise down as much as we could, even though it seems insurmountable. Every single time you calculate the quote dollar per thousand change in the levy per thousand, you have to recalculate the pilot values. You have to recalculate the levy, and that results in what the actual dollar per thousand change is. So it's not that simple. It's a calculation, you have to go through multiple different things. Even if you look at the levy amount right now, the dollar per thousand is proposed to go up 9.7% as proposed, okay? But the levy itself is going up technically a higher percentage than that because of the change in the valuation of the city from year to year, the change in the pilots that are phasing out or phasing in. So right now, if you want to talk about the way we always did it and the way the way the budget director is doing it now, you look at the current levy, the approximation is based on the current levy. But if you want to know the after effect of it, it's a different answer. Yeah. So which one are you doing with the 374?
We can't have meetings like
This isn't a meeting, really. So please stop calling it a meeting. My department heads are here now because the council did not show up to provide quorum. Yep, but you guys can't even technically talk amongst yourselves, because then it would, Frank Carcone is also on here if he wants to ask questions, of the department head meetings.
Okay, thank you. So the next question I have is on our bond anticipation notes within the budget. And I could give an exact page number here.
It's 101.
101.
Yeah.
So, and I just want to understand this too. So if we look at for example, the ban principle, fiscal year 23, we could call it 1.1 million. Fiscal year 24, 1.2 million. Revised this year, fiscal year 2025, 1.4 million. And then we see a jump in the approved up to 2.3 million. Same with the interest, band interest. For example, 2023, just under $500,000. 2024, short of 1.2 million. And now we see the approved at 1.4 million. So my question is, and to whichever department head can answer it, are we paying the minimum required amount on band principal or interest, or are we currently making extra payments on those figures?
Traditionally, we just pay the interest on the band until we roll it into a bond. So the principal is usually still there by the time we bond. We'll put several bands together for one bond.
So I guess I can ask it like this. So, for example, if we're required to make a $10 monthly payment, I'm just using these numbers for ease. If we're required to make a $10 monthly payment, are we making that $10 monthly payment, or are we paying $14, let's say? Are we paying?
We're paying whatever minimum.
The minimum required.
First year is
Okay.
interest only, and then there is some principal involved. I apologize if I said no principal after so many years, but the first year's interest only, then there is some principal involved. But the majority of that money gets bonded for at some point. It has to be within 5 years.
And Mary, you mentioned, I believe you mentioned assessments, assessed value of total properties in the city. If we were to say year over year between fiscal year 25 and anticipated fiscal year 26, what is the total difference in assessed value? And I know it's somewhere in the budget here. And what I'm looking for is what would that equate to in terms of a dollar figure increase? For example, if taxes remain flat year over year and all we had is an increase in total assessed value, what would the increase in that year to year be?
It would also be a small factor in how the pilots roll off. But you can see that if you go into just tax information, you could watch, or you could trace this right from 2014 all the way to the 25-26 budget. You see the valuation, the assessed valuation of the city, say in 2014 was under 1.1 million. Now we're at 1.125 with a full vail of 2.7. Last year's full vail was 2.58, right? So there's obviously been assessed value being added to the tax roll, if you will, the actual property assessments. Now, I can't tell you exactly how that breaks down between buildings we've put on the tax rolls, because there were some that were tax exempt that were incorrect that we corrected throughout last year. But then there's also pilots that roll off. So some of that assessed value comes from that. But again, if it's dollar per thousand, and the dollar per thousand stays fixed, and you added, after the equalization rate, say $100,000 to the assessed rolls, it would be 100 times that dollar amount, the tax, the actual tax rate. That's how much you would add. So if you So right now, it's 33, well, 24, 25, it's $30.80 per thousand, right? So if the rate stayed the same and $100,000 worth of equalized assessment was added to the tax rolls, that would be equivalent to $3,000 in increased levy, okay? $100,000 would be 100, okay, thousands. So it'd be 100 times 30.8. That's how that works, really. So you have to add quite a bit of tax roll assessment to increase the actual levy. However, it does make a difference. That's why you see in 22-23, the tax levy was $30,224,000, right? But then 23-24, it went down to $29,962,000. So you can see that throughout the years where the dollar per thousand stays the same, and depending on the valuation, it goes up and down. So it does affect things. But unless you add like a $9 million assessment, which gets equalized by, say, 41% of the $9 million, that's where you're going to see, that's why the CNY cardiology had such an impact.
And you bring up a good point. I wanted to follow up on that. Do we know year to date the overall dollar figure of assessed value that's been added to the city tax roll?
Well, it's not that it's year to date. The assessor gave us the new roll, so it's on that first page.
I
of the
guess
budget.
I should rephrase. I'm sorry. Since fiscal year 24, we're in fiscal year 25 now. Since fiscal year 24, could you talk about your administration and how much in a dollar figure was added in assessed value between that time?
Yeah, it's 2.745 million minus 2.583, whatever that works out to be, between the 2 years. The assessed valuations are obviously much lower, and then we have the equalization rates taken into account. But you know, that's let's see, this is in billions. So from fiscal year 25 to this year, fiscal year 26, it's roughly 1.5 million if you do the math on it.
Do we anticipate any other properties in the near future being added to the city's tax roll?
We have to go on what the current tax rolls are. So the full val is 2.745 billion. I was saying million earlier, and 1.125 billion equalized. So that's right there on the tax information page. That's from the assessor's office. The only other thing that potentially may happen is St. Elizabeth's campus. We are currently looking at what to assess that campus at, because it would be inappropriate to charge them a for-profit amount as if the building was being used. But the reality is, we are looking at that facility because it has to go back on the tax rolls because it's no longer used for hospital. So that will be added to the rolls, in other words.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, I have
How
nothing else
much,
here.
you know, there's things the assessor has to go through on that.
Timeline on that? Do we have any kind of indication here?
I mean, we gave him a deadline of, you know, he had to get through all the grievances and the tax filings for seniors, et cetera. So, I mean, we're looking at 2-3 months. We gotta have some meetings with the hospital, figure out what's going on. We also have to, he has to go through that building as well, because they're still using certain portions of it. So there's, you know, that's gonna be a bit of a project, but that'll be this year, if you will.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilman Williamson?
Oh, boy. It's terrible. You know, I've been here for 12 years. I came to every one of Paul Mary's events, you know, when he had issues going on. We all showed up to try to make something right. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. When it comes down to department heads, I thank you for all being here, but we understand we're in a situation. And I hope you can go down to bare bones what you can do this year on your budget, because we got to fix it. At the end of the day, we got to fix it. But at the same time, I have another question. St. Elizabeth's, is there going to be a pilot program down the road?
What, are you asking me?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it would be you.
So,
In other words, if they want to do something,
St. Elizabeth's is currently marketing the property for sale.
so is there going to be a pilot program coming in?
Whether it's a TIF, whether it's a pilot, we need to maximize the amount of tax dollars that come from there, whether it's a payment in lieu of taxes, which is still
Sure.
a payment, or it is just raw taxes, yeah. Right now, there can't be a pilot. There's no reason. The reason for a pilot is if, rather than the city having to build a road, the company developing will build the road, but it's actually the city's road, right? So I look at pilots a little differently than other government officials. It has to be a direct replacement for, say, infrastructure costs. It has to be much more tied to the fact that it's a payment in lieu of taxes, so it also has to replace something the city would have to spend in some shape or form. Because if the city had to spend it, we'd have to take taxes from people to spend that. So
Sure.
payment in lieu of taxes should protect people from that as well, right, as far as the pilot goes.
Now, how's that AIM working out? The AIM, I mean, we did that resolution, all the mayors in New York State.
It's in the budget as a second-year extension. The state controller has made mention of it since we passed our resolution, which is positive. But the only thing that we can I don't even say guarantee because the budget's not passed at state level, but the only thing that's currently in the budget proposal now is the second-year extension of the AIM bump, the temporary bump of $1.8 million, which is in the revenue of the budget already. So that's already in the budget book as counted as revenue.
So, like I said, all department heads, I'm glad you're here and everything else, but, we got to figure this out. You know what I mean? I know there's only 4 of us here. The rest of them are not here. I know it's all politics and everything else, which is wrong, because I never missed a meeting when it came down to budget. For my last 12 years, I always showed up. So it just bothers me that it's coming down to this. We're 2 days away where we got to make decisions, and it's just wrong. So hopefully, you guys figure out something, but, taxpayers can't afford another 9%, so that's all I could say. I know it's gonna, it's a domino effect for next year, because like I said in the beginning, the last administration set this administration up for failure, and that's why they're not here right now. It's all gamemanship, and that bothers me. We're not here for that. We're here to do the right thing. So that's all I'm going to say. You guys do great work. I get along with everybody. For all these years, it just bothers me. It really does. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Do you remember my name?
Yes.
And this just to echo on Mark's point, I think it goes back to the point that committee systems are needed. If there's all 9 people in the room don't want to get together to work, at least get the people that understand the budget and want to work on the finances inside the city back to a finance committee so they can make the recommendations to the rest of the council. Because as it looks right now, it's still only the same people doing the same work, and I never not showed up for a meeting, and me and Mayor Palmieri did not get along for a very long time in his last 4 years, but I would never give him the disrespect of not showing up to one of his meetings. With that said, I just wanted to add a couple of things, and this is just kind of for our knowledge. If you go back to the amendments that were vetoed last year, I know that keeps getting brought up, and they keep stating that the reason that they're not putting forth any amendments is because they don't want the mayor to veto them, which that's a bullcrap excuse. We know that you still do your job as a council person and provide how you feel that you can get under 2% if you don't override the tax cap. So I just want to go through a couple of amendments. So last year, the fire employee benefits were vetoed. That was to the tune of $908,000. And there's 4 people in this room, including the guy on the screen, that Frank Arcone, who did not support these. And there was a specific reason why. The other one was license and permits. They increased it to $50,000. Now, these are all revenue-generating ones that, if they didn't exist, this is a financial position would be in. The other one's a non-property tax item, sales tax, $302,000. The other one is miscellaneous revenue, which was for increased pay stations that don't exist, $50,000. And then the other one was departmental income for vacant registry, which was never implemented under the previous administration because the legislation didn't make sense. Just based on those 4 amendments alone, there would be about an additional $1.2 million deficit inside this budget right now, which would total about 3 to 4%. Okay, and the reason that I bring this up is that when you put forth budget amendments, you got to take the responsibility. There's probably department heads around this room that don't like the budget amendments that we propose. I'm willing to take that responsibility on myself, okay? I've sat around this table for a long time. I've been here when we've caught police, fire, DPW. They decimated DPW in the Parks Department because they never even got close to any of those guys back. The problem that I have is that we're here, we want to discuss this, right? Like, we want to figure out where we're at. We have a week before the budget's due. It's due March 20th, okay? We have one meeting scheduled on Wednesday. We have not seen one budget amendment that they want to propose to even see if that is possible that we could entertain. But I will stand firm in my position that even with those amendments, and I could have voted for them just because it looked like the city would have been in a better financial position. But I'm smart enough to know that I'm not going to overestimate on revenues that are non-existent. And I think that's very important that this body holds firm on that position moving forward, no matter what bogus amendments that they put, because it's just going to hurt the city in the future, in the long run. I'm very disappointed. I will say that. I didn't want to be here as much as anybody else. But I think it's important. I think it's extremely disrespectful to the department heads here to not show up to this meeting, knowing that they were going to be here, willing and ready to answer those questions. And I can't say how disgusted I am. I can't echo that enough. I know that there are some people that normally don't get involved in politics that have messaged me today as we're sitting in this room saying that they can't believe that people couldn't show up, the rest of the council couldn't show up to at least give the department heads the respect to at least pull a quorum together. I'm mad, I'm upset. I was upset last week when they didn't override the tax cap and didn't have any amendments proposed. But this is the icing on the cake. And I'm just gonna pressure the council from here on out. If you guys want to sit as a committee of the whole, then you need to stand firm on the committee of the whole through good and bad times. If not, leave it up to a finance committee to do the job and give you the recommendations. All right, that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, council member. I will say this, the mayor, you know, he's in a difficult situation, but, you know, I believe in him. I think he's a really talented, smart guy that puts a lot of time and effort into this budget, and nobody wants a tax increase. And I look at it, last year a little bit over 14%, and this year less than 10. He would have to be crazy, okay, first 2 years to have that type of tax increase if he really didn't believe in his heart that he is setting this city up for more success in the future. And he knows a 2%, a 1% tax increase, we will have the same problems next year. And that's why he's trying to balance the budget. He's trying to create revenue right now with the tax increase so we don't have problems 3-4 years. So even if he's not the mayor in 3 years, he's not setting that other mayor up for failure. And that's why he's doing it. And I believe in him. In my 8 years on the council, from 2005 to 2013 and the last year and a half, we're always looking, we don't want tax increases, we go after all these department heads, we want a nickel and dime, we want to grab the dollar, okay, we want to, you know, we want to step over the dollar and grab the penny, okay. These council members, if they really want to have amendments and they want to go to 0%, then they need to make the tough decision. 2/3 of our budget is public safety. You cut public safety. I'm not saying you cut public safety, okay, but if they really want to make these amendments, Mark, when you first started, how many guys did you have?
Over 80.
How many you have now?
45.
45. Square mileage of the city change?
Nope.
No, probably more duties, more responsibilities, okay? I'm not saying cut public safety, but if you're going to really try to get the taxes down for your constituents, cut public safety. You know where the money is, so go after it if you really want to do your job. That's it.
Have a safe route. Have a safe route.
Councilman Carcone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for all the department heads. I had gone out of town before this meeting was scheduled and I couldn't get back for tonight. But I just have one question real quick, concerned it's probably to the police chief and the fire chief. When we cut this overtime, if they vote to cut this overtime, does that mean some of these very safe, unsafe conditions can come about? We won't be able to answer certain calls because.
So I got to apologize. So was that Councilman Beatrice's question earlier? Was that overtime money? Is that what you're talking about, Jim?
Yeah, he's asking.
He's
asking a little bit different.
Overtime. Now you have situations like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, listen, here's the deal, I mean,
situation.
to be quite honest, we have we have calls we're gonna respond to no matter what, so. I mean, if there's a serious call, we're gonna go. I'm not gonna say that they cut our overtime and we're not responding.
Yeah.
So, you have to look at the trends, you have to look at the numbers and see what the numbers are gonna be. It's a tough projection to make. I mean, we had an incident, the most recent one, is Town Hall. No one would expect that. That cost quite a bit in overtime. If you don't want us to respond to that, tell us and we won't. We're going to.
Well, that just kind of concerns me that you have that on your mind, that you have to worry about overtime when you're gonna run into something like that. I hope that, won't interfere with.
And at the same time, as management, we're fiscally responsible. We monitor overtime. We're not gonna make sure that people aren't, extending calls. But with that being said, we just can't predict when there's just gonna be a shooting, when there's gonna be, we had, someone today was threatening to jump off the bridge in North Utica. That could have been a long, drawn-out, expensive incident had it continued. So there's no way to project what's going to happen. You just have to look at the historical numbers, look at the numbers going forward, and try and come up with an approximation. But we're going to respond no matter what.
Okay, well, just thank you for coming, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there, and we'll work on this budget.
Thank you. Chief Angersall, Chief Noonan, so just want to be clear. I'm for public safety. I believe in public safety. It's the council members. They want to nickel and dime, and they want to, stand on their high arch and say, I'm looking for the taxpayer. If they really want to do their jobs, then make the tough decisions. That's
And I gotta agree with Chief Noonan here. We want to run business models and try to apply them to public safety where none of the things that we do is scheduled. We can look at historical data, see where we're at. Tomorrow the wheels can fall off and we could have multiple firefighters injured. There's no prediction on that. It's very difficult to apply daily business practices to public safety when we're really trying to take the public, put the public first on this.
Thank you, Chief. Any other council members? Any department heads want to speak? Mayor?
Okay. And if it's fine with everybody, obviously people can go last. This might be the last thing that's said. And I am going to ask the department heads to speak. The first thing is the fact that people have attempted to create this narrative that the tax increase last year created a slush fund or expenditures that could just be cut. That entire tax increase, the amount of the dollars raised in the levy was not even equivalent to the fund balance that was appropriated. What that means is we still had to balance the budget with a cash account that is not recurring. We had to pay people, pay salaries, pay for repair lines out of the reserves. That's not that you can't do that. When that account was at zero was 2012. That's when everyone had to say no. Everyone does have to just be immediately fired and services have to be cut because you can't continue to do that. The second thing is, if you want to, and I'm going to ask the hard questions. I'm going to get right to it, right? If the Common Council, I was council president for 8 years. If the Common Council wants to cut something, then they have to ask what will be cut. And if they're going to make a cut, they should understand from the department heads the impact to services, because the Common Council people are the representatives, okay? I have to figure out how to run the city now. I'm no longer an elected representative, I'm the executive. But from the council perspective, I'm going to ask the hard questions that if you want to lop $2.5 million out of this budget, haven't been asked. And someone should be asking them before we decide to do it, just so we understand. So I'm going to go around, and everyone can go through the budget books. This isn't some kind of theater. This isn't nonsense. I have been absolutely to a fault as upfront about every single thing about the city finances since day one. Okay? Day one. So I'm gonna start with DPW. Because if the council was gonna cut that much money, somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000 is gonna come out of your budget. So can you explain the impact of that coming out of your budget to everyone?
It would crush us.
How?
Crush us. Maintenance on my equipment, my equipment line from fixing all my stuff, we won't be able to fix anything with any money. I'm not even gonna mention that I have only 45 guys again. Everybody in this room knows when they call me, our guys are there, no matter if I have one guy or two guys. So the 45 guys I got, you can't even think about doing anything there with that. And I'll stick up to the day I leave this job for them guys.
Right, but so this is like role play here, because I might have to make this decision.
Point of order, Mr.
No,
President.
there's
Mr.
no point of order, there's no meeting.
But Mike, here's what I'm trying to explain to you. I think that this
I
is
won't-
not fair to your department heads, and you're the mayor of the city, and you have every right to oversee them. There are no budget amendments to even discuss. We don't even know if they're gonna take,
All right,
what they're
so,
gonna take out, what they're
just-
gonna do.
So, in all
I mean,
seriousness.
I don't know, Mike. We're
right, well-
sitting here in a room, they didn't even show up.
No,
I mean,
so-
and you're gonna put people on the spot?
All right, you're all here, right? Are you comfortable with me asking you these questions in front of the public?
Yes.
Because in 10 days, I might have to actually ask you these questions to figure out how to hack your departments to pieces.
Correct.
So are you comfortable doing that in front
Yeah.
of everybody? Okay. So 600 grand's coming out of your budget. How are you doing it? Seriously?
No clue. It would crush us.
How?
I wouldn't know. It would just, we're at the bare bones now.
How much do you
Getting
spend?
everything
How much
fi-
do you spend on salt per year?
No,
seriously.
What is it?
We're we finally, under this administration, have put in a salt budget that represents what we truly need.
But we went over that salt budget and we couldn't even get salt.
I know you're uncomfortable saying it because you don't want to see how much we went over because of all the storms.
Right, and we
but-
still don't know right to this
But
point.
it's roughly $550,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Repair lines. How much are your repair lines
200,000.
approximately? 200,000.
We're up to what, at least 180,000.
Okay, so for example, you'd have no salt and not be able to repair plows.
Correct.
Because this is a situation where if the money's not there, it's not there, because we're already taking money out of the fund balance. So I can't keep dipping into a fund balance that we're already taking all the money out of.
Nothing will get fixed. It'll just sit by the, it'll be sitting by the wall.
All right, I'm gonna move on to the fire department. I have to cut, if we're doing 700 from him, 500 grand out of your budget. How are we doing it? Do you have minimum staffing?
We have minimum staff.
Without the
we have-
overtime line, can you do minimum staffing?
No.
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 And
No,
what is
because-
no, so seriously, what is minimum staffing for the public? What is minimum staffing bound by?
It's a contractual obligation.
A contractual
It's It's
obligation.
a collectively bargained agreement between the firefighters of Local 32 and the city of Utica. It keeps the 6 fire stations open, and it gives us a minimum staffing of 23 personnel. We regularly blow through all 23 personnel. There's regular times, day to day. We have 49 plus calls a day for service every 24 hours. We've run almost 8,500 ambulance transports last year. The city of Utica actually needs an additional ambulance. I actually need 2 more staff a day to meet the requirements that we continually see.
But I'm refusing that because.
Yeah, yeah, and we're and I say that to illustrate, you know.
It's not right either, because you want to start transports, you want to be able to get.
Day to day, we're short.
Okay.
So it's.
So if the overtime was cut, could you meet the minimum staffing requirement?
No.
No? Okay. Codes. How big is your entire department? What is your budget?
About $1 million.
Your whole budget's $1 million. So for codes, if I have to cut $500,000 out of your budget, what are we doing to the department?
So, first of all, just to answer your question, but when you asked me this morning, I thought of some things. But to answer your question, I don't know that we'd be fulfilling our contract with the county, which is about $280,000. So we would probably lose that money. A lot of what we do in codes is to process permits, which make us money into doing inspections that we charge for. So you can't just look at like the staffing loss and assume that the revenue is going to be the same, because the revenue will go down with the staffing. That also being said, though, I want people understand where we're at currently, because we're talking about cutting from something. I have a secretary to a codes commissioner, which is a voluntary which is a non-union receptionist.
Not
Not
voluntary.
voluntary.
She's not working for free.
It's a non-union receptionist.
Yeah.
I went through 3 of them last year. I lost one codes officer recently to a big box home improvement store that paid more money than the city of Utica. So I went through 3 receptionists in that position. I had to train them all. It's a technical job, right? The new one that I brought in November went through papers, because a lot of our records are still papers because they're building permits. You can't translate them to the computer. We never got them scanned in. There's no money for the program to do it. So she did it in 4 highlighter colors. So she tried to keep that system consistent and go through all the papers. So she ordered 4 highlighters from the purchasing department. They wouldn't approve the 4 highlighters that she needed the colors. So she literally bought her own highlighters so she could highlight her paper in the same colors that she started with. I got 2 officers that drive around in their own cars every day. I mean, they don't have cars. They go to somebody's house for a codes inspection
In their own
in
car.
their personal cars, which are like 2005 Honda Civics, right? And get out. Nobody knows who they are. People have called me to verify people's IDs because they don't have a city car. That's where I am today. I got a permits
It's
and
not
records
where you are,
clerk.
that's where the city is.
I
We
got a
were cut
permits-
to bare bones already.
Yeah, I got a permits and records clerk who, every time she has to look up a case with somebody on the phone that's asking her for a record, takes her, I would guess, just off the top of my head, 7 or 8 minutes because her computer's too slow. And the person's waiting on the phone. That's cutting productivity. When we process permits, people don't understand. They think a permit, somebody fills out a sheet of paper. We process a permit, it comes with a set of blueprints. It comes with a whole index of 1,000 pages. Somebody has to go through all of that. And if you cut people, you're gonna cut the revenue we get from those things. And ultimately, you're gonna make people less safe and the neighborhoods more dirty. But the way that we are right now, without that 50% cut,
Right.
is, to me, sometimes embarrassing. That's all I want to say.
All right, thank you. I guess I'm gonna move on to engineering, because we're at like 6. If we cut 7 from there, that's, 6 and 7. We're at 13. Take 5, that's 1.8. We're not at 2% yet. So, Nick, 700 grand comes out of your budget. What are you doing? Engineering.
It's not employees. I have 12 people in the department, 7 of which are covered by grants. They don't even cost the city anything. I won't be fixing collapsed storm sewers or sanitary pipes. There'll be backups everywhere. I'm not fixing.
Are we mandated
anything.
by the state to fix that stuff?
Yeah, that's like, you can't have somebody's house back up. A sanitary line collapses, you can't flush your toilet. It's coming back into your house. You can't run the laundry. Friday, we had an incident of just this, and one of our engineers was on site until the night. And we did fix the pipe, which cost me, well, I haven't got the bill yet, but we're looking at about $20,000. I have $8,000 left in that line. This was an emergency. I didn't ask for it. It came up.
By the way, a plumbing inspector is there at night to make sure that the plumbing is done well, and we don't have an overtime budget.
Exactly.
He just showed up and did it.
He just shows up and do it.
And we run the same problems.
So
no, where? I don't even know. I don't know where.
All right, so just
Tomorrow the
last
city
year,
wakes up.
last year before you were hired, one of the amendments that I vetoed, which I'm demonized for, okay? We talk about it in my office all the time. This was contractual stormwater. The council wanted to bring that from $350 to $250, $100,000. Year to date, you're at $320,000.
And I need $20,000 to put into the sanitary line to cover.
For what just happened?
What just happened. I'm gonna
Right.
ask for an E&A transfer.
Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is I did go through, it was a pretty lengthy discussion, but I went through with the council, the budget, page by page, and talked about all the things that I whittled down to bare bones, based on my experience as council president. The public, some of the public right now thinks that I've added to the actual discretionary budget. It's obviously not true. This is another example of that. Okay, had we cut this by $100,000, you would be deficit spending right now by $120,000.
And much like how Chief Noonan said, I'm not gonna not fix the pipe. Tomorrow the city wakes up, tomorrow I'm fixing it if it's broken, which is only gonna decimate our budget.
Well, so here's the
and
problem
have
with
to
that.
pull from more
Here's the problem with
funds.
that. I won't not authorize you to fix a sanitary pipe,
Right?
but if we're deficit spending because we have to fix pipes, if we're deficit spending because we have to show up to calls, how much does the Boilermaker cost to run in overtime? Is that, Chief Noonan, or Deputy Chief Noonan, is the Boilermaker funded by sponsors, or does the city do that? How much money does the Boilermaker cost to run in our overtime? In all seriousness,
Probably $40,000.
$40,000. What about the party in the park? Which, because of what happened, the tragedy that happened last year didn't happen, but how much does that cost?
I've got approximation, probably $12,000 to $15,000.
$12,000, $15,000 in overtime.
Right.
So we're gonna be, just so you're all aware.
Same overtime for you? Similar?
About half.
Yeah, and I'm trying to focus on the departments that aren't necessarily public safety, because public safety is the purview of the council, okay? With specific respect to the complement. I understand the overtime lines can be managed, but in certain circumstances they can't. But with respect to the police department, the way to manage overtime lines, if the money truly isn't there, is we're not gonna be able to support the events.
New Year's Eve events, all the major events that we have are primarily funded by overtime. I mean, so that's quality of life in the city, right? I mean,
Right. Now, there might be people out there that say, don't get rid of it, go get rid of it. But something like the Boilermaker, the economic impact genuinely, especially if we implement a bed tax, will be coming directly to the city. Correct? Yeah.
Master Chief.
You know, the Irish parade, the Memorial Day parade.
I was gonna be Irish, the Irish, same catch. That's not touchable.
But you know what I mean? I mean, it all adds up.
It does all add up. And the reality is, if we don't have the money, for me, it doesn't add up. So we won't be able to do things. And that's just, I've been like that since January 1st, 2024. We're going to have to figure it out. I understand the people in the room, but listen, we had a lot of difficult conversations while I was council president. Council President Geruzzi is willing to lead those difficult conversations. If we were not going to waive the tax cap and we're going to let this deadline expire, this is the conversation I would have expected to have with the Common Council. So even if they wanted to commit to cutting the budget, purview of the council, working with me on cutting the budget, bringing amendments to me, going back and forth, right? That's the government process. We at least should understand how to prioritize that for the public, right? What to pick from. And without having those meetings, that's why I wanted this. That's why I wanted the council to show up, because without actually asking the department heads that and having a public meeting about it as a common council, the public is gonna clap if you say zero. They're gonna clap if you say we reduce taxes. They're gonna clap if you say that the taxes won't go up. But there is a limit to how much we can do without the funding. Without adding to the discretionary budget that I had control over last year, we did do a lot more with the Parks Department. We did do a lot more with the homeless cleanups, the unhoused. We added youth services to the rec center, but I was able to do that by reorganizing the money we already had, not adding to the budget, right? But now there's a limit to that. So for those that aren't here, they're gonna be flying blind. They can watch this. That's why I wanted to still have the meeting. And if the tax cap's not waived, we will have to figure it out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Make the motion to adjourn.
There is no motion.
Sam's gonna let us know.
Can we
Thank
go?
you.
Yes, you can, Marcus.